Aliens are real, and Phil Schneider claimed the US government made a shocking deal: human lives in exchange for alien technology. Hidden bases, dark experiments, and chilling extraterrestrial encounters, Schneider risked everything to expose the truth. This is Damage Control's report on the mystery of Dulce Base. Born in 1947, Phil grew up in an environment shaped by science and secrecy. His father, Oscar Schneider, was a US Navy captain and reportedly involved in classified military technology, including working on nuclear-powered submarines and aerospace medicine. His youth was set in an atmosphere of precision and rigor, which set the foundation for his future in engineering and geology. He pursued his studies with focus and dedication, earning credentials in geological engineering and structural engineering. His expertise was unique. Not only did he understand the complexities of mining and geology, he also had specialized knowledge in creating and supporting underground structures. These skills would eventually make him indispensable to the US government's covert construction projects, where his background and capabilities set him apart. His early career was marked by contracts with several prominent firms, including Morrison-Knudsen, Bechtel, and EG&G, all major contractors with ties to high security and government-linked operations. His initial work in geology and engineering seemed straightforward, but as his career progressed, he claimed to have witnessed technologies and events that began to shake his understanding of reality. Over his 17-year tenure as a contractor, Phil claimed to have worked on some of the most highly classified projects in US history. Among these was a project in a remote location in New Mexico that would come to haunt him: Dulce Base. Dulce Base wasn't your typical military installation. Located near the small town of Dulce in New Mexico on the Jicarilla Apache Reservation, this facility was part of a network of deep underground military bases, or DUMBs, built with the explicit purpose of hiding some of the US government's most sensitive projects. He said that there are over 129 of these bases across the country, each connected by a high-speed rail network capable of traveling at Mach 2. Dulce, however, was different from the rest. It wasn't only a US government facility, it was a shared installation where humans and extraterrestrials conducted joint experiments, often with horrifying results. According to Phil, his work at Dulce Base involved overseeing geological drilling and structural planning for the underground complex. In the beginning, his assignment seemed technical, with no clear indication of what lay deeper below the surface. But over time, he began to realize that something far darker was taking place in Dulce. He described the project as shrouded in secrecy, with armed guards everywhere, strict protocols, and limited access to different parts of the facility. He claimed that he and his team were kept in the dark about what they were doing, with specific instructions to avoid certain areas and to keep their findings to themselves. Despite the strict security, Phil eventually pieced together a terrifying picture of what was happening beneath the surface. He described Dulce Base as a multi-level installation with floors dedicated to different types of research and experimentation, from genetic manipulation to mind control. According to him, the second level, he said, held human staff housing, while the third level was reserved for executive offices and communication facilities. These levels, though fortified and tightly monitored, were accessible to contractors and lower-level employees. It was the fourth level and below where things became weird. He described the fourth level as dedicated to mind control experiments, where individuals were allegedly subjected to various forms of psychological and sensory manipulation. However, level 5 was even weirder. He alleged that this level housed living quarters, not for humans, but for extraterrestrials. He described these entities as greys, the classic depiction of aliens with large heads, slender bodies, and greyish skin. He claimed that the presence of extraterrestrials was treated as a matter of fact within the base, with protocols established for personnel to interact or avoid interaction with these beings. He suggested that the extraterrestrials and humans were working in collaboration, sharing information and technology. For those who had clearance, the sight of an alien in the halls of Dulce Base was routine, but he maintained that these interactions were not always peaceful or voluntary, with humans often bearing the brunt of the power imbalance. The seventh level was the coldest and most disturbing. This level was dedicated to cryogenics and storage, According to him, this area contained vats filled with human and animal body parts, preserved in what he described as a grotesque state of suspended animation. He believed these body parts were the remnants of failed experiments, evidence of the government's willingness to sacrifice lives in the name of progress and power. The 7th level was strictly off-limits to most personnel. These claims set him apart as a controversial figure, but they also put him in danger. His most notorious claim involved a supposed encounter in 1979 that changed the course of his life and his relationship with the US government, as he would inadvertently stumble into an alien presence. On a routine day, he was tasked with assessing rock samples to determine the best type of explosives to use for expanding the base. On this particular day, however, he and his team encountered significant resistance in drilling. Equipment malfunctioned, tools broke unexpectedly, and the ground, as he later put it, just didn't feel right. Then, a breakthrough. They drilled into what seemed to be a hollow area beneath the earth, a cavern unlike anything he had ever seen. In full protective gear, he descended into the shaft to investigate the cavern. He quickly noticed an unusual, almost suffocating odor in the air, something that felt wrong. As he continued, he claimed to have seen movements in the darkness, vague shapes that defied any logical explanation. Then suddenly, he was face to face with what he described as a 7-foot-tall grey alien. The creature's skin was pale and had an otherworldly sheen, and its face lacked features humans would recognize. Its eyes were dark, almost empty, like voids that absorbed light. He acted on instinct, reaching for his sidearm, a small pistol he carried as a standard precaution. As he fired, he felt an intense wave of heat engulf his hands and chest, followed by a searing pain. He later described the weapon that struck him as a plasma gun, wielded by the alien, leaving him with severe injuries. The incident escalated almost immediately. Backup arrived in the form of military personnel he hadn't expected to see underground. Green berets, black berets, and other high-security units, armed and ready for combat. The presence of these troops confirmed Phil's growing suspicion that the government had long known about these extraterrestrials inhabiting the cavern. The military engaged with what he would call the Dulce Wars, or the alien-human war. According to him, 66 soldiers lost their lives in the battle that ensued, a skirmish involving humans and alien entities. The aliens fought back with advanced technology, weaponry far beyond anything the US military possessed. Only a handful of humans survived, and Phil believed he was lucky to be among them, despite his injuries. He was lifted back to the surface by a Green Beret, whom he credited with saving his life. The soldier, however, did not survive. He died in the struggle to reach the lift. He reported that the US government took every measure to keep the incident classified, briefing those involved under threats of severe penalties should they ever reveal what happened in that underground cavern. The cover-up was extensive, meticulously organized to prevent any possibility of public discovery. Most of the men were simply reported as missing in action or transferred to other assignments, erasing any trace of their involvement. After the encounter, he found himself in recovery for over a year, dealing with visible scars, missing fingers, and a chest injury. But the psychological scars ran even deeper. As he recovered, he was met with two choices: stay silent, keep working with the government, and let the secrets he uncovered die with him, or speak out and expose the truth about what he believed was a dangerous alliance between the US government and extraterrestrial forces. But haunted by what he had seen, Phil began speaking out publicly, hoping that the story might expose the government's complicity in the alien agenda. According to him, what happened at Dulce was not an isolated event. He cited that such construction projects were funded by an immense clandestine budget, what he called the Black Budget, which he estimated absorbed a quarter of the US gross national product each year. This budget was hidden from public scrutiny and was overseen by a small, powerful circle of government agencies and private contractors. His claim of a black budget program hinted at financial manipulation on an enormous scale. painting a picture of a government operating in two realms, one public, accountable, and democratic, and the other secretive and highly militarized. This shadow government, as he described it, controlled vast resources and operated independently, far removed from any public oversight. Phil named some of the prominent corporations involved, including major aerospace and defense contractors such as Lockheed Martin, EG&G, and Bechtel. But his most startling claim was that the US government had entered formal agreements with extraterrestrial beings. Central to his story was the alleged 1954 Grenada Treaty, reportedly signed by the Eisenhower administration. This allowed limited alien experiments on humans and animals in exchange for advanced technology. Yet he insisted that the aliens gradually pushed beyond these agreed-upon boundaries, conducting experiments that far exceeded the treaty's original terms. The government was not just aware of alien abductions, but it had also allowed them to happen, enabling an alien-led genetic program aimed at harvesting human biological material. This genetic experimentation was not isolated, pointing to thousands of missing persons whom he believed had become unwilling test subjects. To support his claims, Phil cited widespread cases of animal mutilations, particularly of cattle, which had troubled investigators and farmers for decades. He suggested that these cases where cattle were found surgically mutilated and drained of blood were parts of alien experiments that were conducted when human subjects were unavailable or impractical. Phil often brought physical evidence to his talks, showing pieces of unusual metal which he claimed were recovered from alien spacecraft. One particular sample he called muronite was harder than diamond and contained elements unknown on Earth, used in the construction of stealth aircraft. These materials, he argued, were proof of the government's collaboration with aliens and the resulting technological advancements. He further claimed that developing these materials required a vacuum environment, leading him to believe that the government, with alien assistance, had created orbital manufacturing facilities. He alleged that many space shuttle missions included secret objectives to transport these rare materials to and from these hidden space stations. Alien technology wasn't restricted to military use. Agencies like DEA and ATF also employed this technology in covert operations, suggesting that alien advancements were being used to control and manipulate society without public knowledge. He believed this agenda was aimed to reduce the global population drastically through war, engineered pandemics, and selective extermination. As he revealed in his last series of public lectures, he has numerous incidents of harassment and surveillance by government agents, including repeated break-ins at his home, the tampering of his personal documents, and belongings disappearing inexplicably. He alleged that he was followed, watched, and targeted by individuals he believed were linked to intelligence agencies like the CIA and NSA. These occurrences, he argued, were coordinated attempts to intimidate him into abandoning his whistleblowing efforts. His paranoia was not entirely unwarranted, as he had been warned by others who had worked on classified projects. One of his closest friends, Ron Rummel, had reportedly encountered a similar fate. Rummel was known within certain circles for publishing information on government extraterrestrial activities. In 1993, Rummel was found dead, and his death was ruled a suicide. Though the circumstances surrounding it were murky, he believed that Rummel's death was not a suicide but rather a targeted killing, meant to eliminate him before he could reveal too much. He also spoke about incidents where he claimed to have been physically attacked in confrontation with a federal agent who allegedly tried to assault him in his home.
I'm not just talking about me, I'm talking about a bunch of us getting together and getting on this stump and loving our country more than we love our lives. Getting on, some of us are going to get killed. I almost got killed a couple of weeks ago.
He defended himself and narrowly escaped, but the incident left him shaken. He told audiences that these attacks were signs of a larger conspiracy to silence anyone daring to speak out against the government-alien connection.
These people don't want publicity. I shot a federal agent 16 days ago. Shot him dead when I was bleeding to death with a shoulder wound. I made a report and went to the FBI. You realize that, you know what they said? They said, things like this happen, Mr. Schneider, we don't either believe you, I'm using that as my own italics, or we don't give a damn.
He often told his audience he was prepared for the worst. He often reminded them that if anything happened to him, it would not be by his own hand. He insisted that he would never commit suicide, hoping that if something happened to him, people should investigate. In January 1996, Phil Schneider was found dead in his apartment in Wilsonville, Oregon. Officially, his death was ruled as a suicide. However, the details surrounding his death ignited a firestorm of speculation and conspiracy, with many believing that he, in fact, had been murdered. He was found with a medical tube tightly wrapped around his neck, multiple times, tied in an unusual manner. For many who knew him, this method of death was suspicious, especially given his physical limitations. He had lost several fingers, had limited mobility due to his illnesses, and suffered from brittle bone syndrome due to his cancer. Close friends and family questioned how someone in his weakened state could have managed to strangle himself in such a way. In those that believed the story, this only deepened their conviction that he had been silenced. After his death, many of his personal belongings vanished, leaving his family and supporters further unsettled. Recordings of his lectures, documents he had referenced, and even materials that were of extraterrestrial origin, all were reportedly missing from his apartment. His ex-wife, Cynthia, confirmed that numerous items had disappeared before she could retrieve them. This unusual cleanup, as if his apartment had been scrubbed of any evidence, raised the specter of government involvement. If Phil's claims were fabrications, why the need for such thorough removal of his belongings? His family pursued answers, pressing authorities to conduct a more thorough investigation, but their efforts were met with resistance. The medical examiner declined to visit the scene of the death, stating that it was unnecessary, and blood and urine samples that were taken were later reported missing. These omissions only deepened the conviction among his supporters that the truth was being actively concealed. They pointed to a list of associates who had been allegedly suicided after attempting to reveal similar information, claiming that Phil had become the latest victim in a long line of silenced whistleblowers.